Go to Columbus, Ohio, an update on some of these victims who've been in the hospital from the incident on campus yesterday.
Which is housed in Watts Hall and the McQuaig complex where the incident took place. I actually had taught a class a little bit down the road in Evans' lab from 8 to 9. I'd gone back to my office in Watts Hall, and as one does at that time of day, made coffee, and it just started it when our building fire alarm went off. So everybody exited the building. It turned out it was a gas leak in some equipment in one of the research laboratories. So everybody was standing outside. The Columbus Fire Department turned up. The Columbus Police Department, I think, came with them as well. And firemen in the full gear and breathing apparatus went in to check on this leak. After about probably 15-20 minutes, the firemen came out, and that's usually a sign that they've cleared the building and it's about time to go in. And I began to walk back a little bit east on West 19th towards the back entrance of Watts Hall there, which fronts onto that street. And as I was walking, I suddenly heard a shout and then this tremendous crash. And it was the silver car, the perpetrator's car, that had mounted the curb and hit a large, well, you saw them probably, one of those large concrete planters on the curb, and bounced off. And that did enough damage to stop the car. And as it was stopping, I assumed, because I didn't really see it, as it was stopping, it clipped the back of my right leg and basically flipped me up in the air, and I landed on concrete, which at my age is not what you want to do. And so I was there and a little bit dazed and figuring how to get up. And meanwhile, the perpetrator had exited the vehicle on the other side, the road side, which was his driver's side, and had begun to attack the students. And there was a lot of noise and a lot of shouting. However, I got up, and with a number of students and some others, started to make progress towards the building, to get in the building and hide. And even as I was doing that, before I could get to the back end of the building, which was only probably 20 yards away, I heard the 3 shots that presumably were the ones that Officer Hushko fired that took down the assailant. That was it. I went down into the basement of the building, which of course I know very well. Okay, which I know very well, and sat there, and one of the students with me said, "Oh, you're bleeding," and I said, "Yeah, well, I've got a little blood." No, he said, "No," and there were footprints of blood all the way down the hall. So at that point, they called one of the emergency, I think it was in the fire department, emergency technicians. They came down, and they were fortunately already on the scene, and I was taken from there and transported to OSU Medical Center, where I was extremely well looked after. So I've just been discharged this afternoon. So and that's why I have yellow socks on and walking a little slowly. So that's what I usually do. No, I never heard the assailant say anything. First of all, my injuries, I say I've got had 2 deep lacerations down here just above the right ankle towards the back. Those were closed in the operating theater in the trauma center. And I also have some severe contusions down the left-hand side of the left leg, which they were concerned might possibly be a fracture in the tibia or fibia. And because of the amount of swelling, they couldn't really determine and see the fracture until sometime today. So they have fortunately determined there is no fracture there, but it's sort of swollen and bruising. So I am extremely apart from the leg trauma, obviously you don't do all these rib muscles and everything else much good when you get shot up into the air like that. So actually more inconvenient is I'm really sore and stiff in the ribs and back. When the car hit me, I didn't really know what to think. I thought, well, maybe this is, a traffic accident. But then there were people started shouting immediately, and I couldn't hear what they said, but it was like, panic shouting. So obviously, at that point, I figured out it was more than just a car accident. Yeah. I think that, I'm not entirely sure, I think the 2 cuts in the leg were actually from the vehicle. I think the vehicle hit the planter, which basically destroyed much of the front end. And my impression is that it left a lot of open, jagged metalwork there, and it was that sliced the back of my leg. And the 2 parallel cuts, about 4 or 5 inches long. Yeah. Sorry? Oh, I'm happy to go in there. In fact, my wife drove me there. I parked outside today. My colleagues were in a faculty meeting, and so I don't feel that the Watts Hole itself wasn't threatened. This was a street accident and a street incident, and it was just unfortunate that because of this completely unrelated fire alarm, there were a lot of people out there. It was also, in my view, very fortunate that he hit this big concrete planter, because that had not been there, and he'd have ridden up on the curve, he would have plowed into 40 or 50 people. So